Also, but the good thing is the Korean government, they have a kind of will to change the traditional higher ed system. Also, they know that the low birth rate, because of the low birth rate, the university, they need some new revenue, which means the new students. So in the sense, the adult students, they are the market. So in the sense, even though now the VPL is not the popular in Korea, within 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a very big issue, I hope. Then also, even though we have, in that sense, we don't have a VPL policies in place. If the VPL is getting popular, we do have some professionals to be trained. But we have admission officers in Korea. It started maybe about 5 years ago, which is very familiar with, the practice, the admission officers at traditional higher ed, very similar to the VPL in university in European countries. They use portfolios, the documents, some activities they have to prove to enter the college. I'm talking about the regular young college, young students who want to enter a college. So we can switch those admission officers as a VPL assessors. So as Professor Kang from Seoul National University, he had a workshop yesterday about training assessors in VPL in a college, but that is a good model, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. From this discussion also came another issue, and that is the question of the fragmentation or the integration of the VPL. I think that education is a holistic process, so it is built with different building blocks, and I think it is interesting to hear what you see about. We have seen here or heard here in this conference a number of very good examples of good practice system that has been developed. The question is, how can we, all those things which are developed in different ways in different countries, can be in a way integrated, and maybe also what is the relationship between at least the formal and informal education. We heard at the very beginning that there are two ways or two streams to be followed, and I would just like to hear your opinion about that. External.
Back to you. I was struck by your use of the word fragmentation, because what I prefer to use is the word differentiation. That the more different kinds of contexts I see for RPL, the more I see the need that we do have to differentiate, that you can't always do the practice or the system or it's not going to be the same from place to place to place, or purpose to purpose to purpose. So the integration is good, to be able to share what we have in common or good practices, but in some senses what could be excellent practice in one context would be bad practice in another context. And I'd like to see that there's more subtle understanding, more, Judy's favorite word, nuanced understanding of what constitutes good practice that's emerging.
Could just say yes, I agree. But then thinking about the European perspective, when the ambition is that all countries by 2018 should have a functioning VPL system, then of course the practices and the levels are very different. Then if there's a dual system which is functioning very well, or an integrated system which is functioning well, it's up to the country. then thinking about the individual, of course, and what we have heard here is that the systems, whatever they are, they should be as seamless as possible, on as having not too hard possibilities to move between the different, if it's a dual system, between these different models. So this is, I think, what we should be striving for, thinking that wherever and however I have learned, then I can get my competencies valued for the purpose that I have. And then we come to the seamless systems that I'm mentioning, that would be an ideal, or should suit the purpose for the individual.
I agree perfectly with you, Andra, and I think that we have to move away from fragmentation, but not fragmentation intended as differentiation, because of course we know that there is no one size fits all. It has been recognized and accepted by everyone, but the fragmentation is the project-based approach, which of course it's also important. We must start small if we must start, but at a certain point that must be a holistic vision, an overall vision, and validation must be part of the strategy of an employment and education policy of a country, and it must be clear how this fits into it. And for the individual perspective, there should be no difference in the way he or she acquires certain learning outcomes. It can be through formal education, it can be VET, higher education, it can be from work experience, it can be from digital resources, and it doesn't matter. What it matters is that the individual acquires the skills that he or she needs for their job, for their personal life, and that they get to use it, either formally recognized or not formally recognized, but they must be able to use what they have learned, no matter how.
Yes, I think I have about 4 things to say, and on this, I think it is very important that we know who is steering the process and who is, some sort of a coordinating body who can oversee the intersectoral linkages and the public policy issues around validation. I think that should be very clear. What is the purpose? What are the challenges that VPL is going to address in the country? I think there should be some sort of an overview of that, whether you have it in a lifelong learning strategy paper or something like that. I think it does help in the coordination and to reduce the fragmentation. The second thing is, I agree that one does tend to prioritize certain sectors of the certain areas, and you can't do VPL of everything, so you have to prioritize, and I think countries are doing that. They see that it is relevant for certain policy areas, and so it has to be linked to these issues. The other thing is, I think, educational policy should be linked together with employment policy. These are basic things which should happen, and there is a need for that, And another thing which one can do is I found in this workshop, I found it very interesting to see how to transfer good practices which one has in the workplace context into the educational context. And we sometimes don't look at that. We think that we should only learn from the good practices in the higher education sector, but there are a lot of good practices happening in enterprises which one could also transfer. So this transferability should also be kept in mind. Thank you.
There's many things to say on this. I'll try to keep it short. One of the things that has been discussed, I think, not only in my home country, Sweden, when it comes to validation, but in many other places as well, is that for individuals and for employers, the systems are often very hard to overlook, to overview, and they're confusing, and you don't really know where to turn, and et cetera, et cetera. And in Sweden, unfortunately, we downsized our guidance some years ago, which makes it problematic. And one of the solutions that has been discussed towards that, to solve that problem, is a single entry point for individuals. No matter what the purpose of validation is, or what type of validation provider, or in what level of the system, education system or qualification system, that people know where to go when they need help with this. And I think that's an important issue, to try to get away from not diversity but from fragmentation. And I also think it's important to remember, and this is my personal view, I should say, remember, why are we doing this? Why do we do this? Why do we try to promote this idea of recognizing prior learning? And to me, it's about actually creating the possibility of lifelong learning and to remove bottlenecks for people, to remove dead ends for people. So in that regards, we need to create these kind of very simple ways of actually accessing the system. So I'm coming back to the idea of the single entry point to this. And one of the things that I think we sometimes forget, and this is again my personal opinion why I don't like the acronym that we use in the European Union, the VPL, is that we talk about validation, we talk about recognizing non-formal and informal learning, and sometimes we talk about formal learning as well. And we forget that we need to have a holistic approach to this, because when you meet a person, when you meet an individual, as an assessor or as a guidance counselor or whatever, you can't differentiate whether they've learned something formally or non-formal or through informal learning. You need to look at the whole person. So I think we also need to try to move our discussions to a more holistic view of this, which to me was the starting point for validation, the holistic view on learning. So I think that's an important thing to try to create coherence in the systems.
Yes, I think that in having a holistic approach in validation of prior learning and making it really work, there's one key factor, and that is the use of a learning outcomes approach. And what I've learned is that we have used the learning outcomes approach very good in the, try to use it very good in the VPL context, but you need to be consistent in your design throughout all the regions and contexts that you are using it. And if we still have the curriculum as the core of the steering mechanisms and the rules and regulations regarding education,